Today on the newscast, the U.S. prepares to send thousands of Marines to the Middle East along with warships as a message to Iran. But is the Iranian regime listening? Get my take next. Hey folks, Erick Stakelbeck here. Welcome to the Watchman Newscast. We told you earlier this week here on the newscast that the United States is sending F-16 fighter jets to the Middle East. Now, those F-16s will join F-35 fighter jets that were recently deployed, as well as A-10 Warthogs. And of course, there are some 900 U.S. soldiers on the ground in Syria right now, and about 2,000 U.S. troops next door in Iraq. But these latest deployments of the fighter jets are clearly meant as a signal to the Iranian regime. The United States wants to deter Iran from causing more havoc in the waters of the Middle East, in particular seizing shipping there. But now we have some new deployments, very significant deployments in my view, that were announced yesterday, Thursday, July 20th, by the Pentagon. We are going to break it down in a minute, the larger ramifications and what Iran's reaction may be. But before I do, a quick reminder to subscribe to the Watchman News channel right here on YouTube and click the notification bell so you get alerts every time a new video is posted. Folks, events are unfolding at such a rapid clip in the world's most volatile and chaotic region, the Middle East, that you do not want to miss a single upload right here on the Watchman YouTube channel. By the way, did you hear this, what we're about to share, in the mainstream media? I'd wager you probably didn't, but hey, a very major announcement in my view yesterday by the U.S. Pentagon that a Marine Expeditionary Force would be deployed to the Middle East. Now, that usually includes about 2,500 U.S. Marines, a significant number for sure, and also 3 warships. An amphibious ready group will also be deploying to the Middle East. The Pentagon just announced this yesterday. To me, that's a pretty major development, folks, but the mainstream media, crickets chirping, you're not hearing much about it. These deployments, in addition to F-35s, F-16s recently, mark a ramping up of the U.S. presence in the Middle East after obviously a drawdown over the past decade or so in terms of major numbers of U.S. troops there. But now, as a message to the Iranian regime, the U.S. is ramping up its presence in the Middle East. Now, a few things to keep in mind here and a little bit of background when we look at the thinking behind these deployments. The Iranian regime has been consistently, and I mean for years, harassing shipping in the Persian Gulf, in the Gulf of Oman, and beyond, and has, come into conflict with the U.S. Navy there on many occasions. We have outlined this on the newscast just in recent weeks, that a U.S. Navy destroyer essentially chased off Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps about 2 weeks ago as the IRGC was attempting to seize 2 oil tankers in the waters of the Persian Gulf. So again, coming into direct conflict with the U.S. Navy. Shots were not exchanged, were not fired between U.S. forces and Iranian forces, but folks, clearly the potential is there as these incidents on the high seas of what can only be described as Iranian piracy conducted by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps continue since April alone. The Iranian regime has seized at least 3 shipping vessels. Now the U.S. is responding with what is a show of force, no doubt. The big question, how will the Iranian regime react, and do the mullahs in Tehran believe that there is muscle, that there's teeth behind these actions by the United States? Clearly, the Iranian regime is not happy to see F-16s, F-35s, A-10 Warthogs, 2,500 U.S. Marines potentially, and 3 warships in their immediate vicinity patrolling the waters of the Middle East. So Iran is none too happy about that. But if you are the Iranian regime, do you really believe that the Biden administration will use force? Folks, we've laid this out for you recently. Look, over the past 2.5 years since Joe Biden took office, the Iranian regime and its allies have carried out no less than 80 attacks against U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria. The Biden administration responded to those 80 attacks exactly 3 times. Not exactly a deterrent there. Number 2, we've got the Iranian regime plotting to assassinate former Trump administration officials on U.S. soil, and even Biden officials have acknowledged that fact. And yet, the Biden administration, despite all of these provocations, including Iran, of course, arming its proxies on Israel's borders and instigating conflict after conflict there, despite all that, the Biden administration has been desperate to forge a new nuclear deal with the Iranian regime in some form or fashion. But all of this is happening as well against the backdrop of the Iranian regime over the past several months literally cracking the skulls of protesters in the streets. So we have this strange situation, folks, which I just laid out for you, where on the one hand, the Biden administration is appeasing the Iranian regime, and on the other hand, it is bolstering its forces in the Middle East as a show of force to that same Iranian regime. It's a bit of a schizophrenic policy. Hey, I sat down with Ron Dermer, the former Israeli ambassador to the United States, the current strategic affairs minister in Israel. He is very close to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He is Bibi's top advisor. We sat down in Jerusalem back in October, several months ago, but what we discussed is very relevant to our discussion today, in particular, the Biden administration's desperate attempts to forge a new Iran nuclear deal, and what that says to Iran, the region, and the world, why it is so dangerous. Take a look. The Biden administration still seems to be fixated on forging a new Iran nuclear deal. Ambassador, you sounded the alarm on this on the first incarnation of this deal, why it was so disastrous. Why would it be such a mistake, certainly at this point in history, to come to a new agreement with the mullahs in Tehran?
Well, what the administration says now, what they said 2015, is everything Iran is doing will be much worse if they have nuclear weapons. I agree with that. You know what the problem is? The deal that they want to do with them doesn't block them from getting nuclear weapons. It actually paves a path for Iran to get nuclear weapons because it puts certain restrictions on Iran's nuclear program for a short number of years. Now, in 2015, those restrictions were 5 years and 7 years and 8 years and 10 years and 15 years, meaning in 2030, started in 2015, there's no restrictions on Iran's nuclear program. So you're going to make a deal, you're going to give a kosher stamp, and you're going to allow Iran to slowly but surely move ahead and create a nuclear arsenal. And at the same time, you're going to release hundreds of billions of dollars that are going to fuel Iran's war machine in the region. Now, if there would be a deal on the table, Eric, that would actually block Iran's path to getting nuclear weapons, I would support it, even if it would call for removing sanctions. But this deal doesn't do it. It was a tragedy when it was done in 2015. Today, it's a farce. It has become an absolute farce. And what's interesting to me is that the dissidents in Iran are telling the United States and the European powers to not do this deal. That was something they didn't say 7 years ago, because now they understand that if this deal is done, all it will do will give more money to the Iranian regime to repress them. And that's why they're calling to end it. So they should listen. The United States, Britain, France, and Germany should be listening to the people of Iran and abandon the negotiating table. Call them the evil, it's not an empire, but call them the evil regime that they are. They're working, as you know, and you've written about, Iran is in Iraq, they're in Syria, they're in Lebanon, they're in Gaza.
Head of the snake.
They're in Venezuela, in your backyard. They are trying to export terrorism through their proxies like Hezbollah or the Houthis, and they have a terror network all around the world. This is the foremost sponsor of terrorism in the world. You have the people of Iran that aren't burning the American flags. They're burning pictures and tearing down pictures of Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. They're burning the pictures of the Ayatollah. And instead of getting support from the outside world is ignoring them. This is a moment where we can peacefully resolve the nuclear problem of Iran. Because, look, we do nothing and Iran gets nuclear weapons. It is a catastrophe. If we stop it, we're going to have to launch an action in order to prevent that. Now, that will come with a heavy price. We might have to pay that price because the danger of a nuclear Iran that calls and works for Israel's destruction is so great that we may have to do it.
Great insights there from Ron Dermer, Israel's former ambassador to the U.S. and current Strategic Affairs Minister. Again, he is Bibi's top advisor, very close to Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he lays out a very relevant point, folks, that at the end of the day, Israel will be forced to act alone against Iran's nuclear facilities if the only posture from the West, including the United States, of course, is appeasement of the Iranian regime and desperate attempts to forge a new nuclear deal. I'd love to hear what you make of all of this. What do you make of, on one hand, the Biden administration clearly appeasing, in my view, the mullahs in Tehran, yet on the other hand, look, F-16s, F-35s, A-10 Warthogs, 3 warships, and some 2,500 U.S. Marines heading to the region. What do you think of all of this? Where is it heading? And I guess the main question would be, is this heading towards conflict between the U.S. and the Iranian regime, or does Iran see this as a nuisance for sure in their view, more than a nuisance, but at the end of the day, does the Iranian regime see the Biden administration as bluffing with this show of force? A very important question. I would love to get your comments here in the comments section. Hey, thanks so much for joining us here today on the Watchman Newscast. We will continue to follow all of these developments for you. Until next time, God bless you. And remember, never hold your peace. Hey everyone, thanks for checking out the Watchman Newscast. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you back here tomorrow.